All right. I guess I didn't count, but.
Okay. Welcome to the Sisters interview. Tonight we are starting our series on baronial.
Oh no.
Of Antir, and I am having some connectivity issues, so I apologize if I'm choppy. So tonight we have Baron and Baroness Three Mountains, Decimus Felix and Vivien Nickeldune. They are both Pelicans, and
that's all you need to know. We're pretty great. The sisters are pretty great.
Have both been in the SCA for a while. We're with a lot of forethought, and so with that, how did each of you start in the SCA?
Vivien, would you like to start? Sure.
I was in junior high, and my Girl Scout leader had another Girl Scout leader friend who saw the book I was reading, and she decided that was medieval history, so I must like that. So she took me to an event. I was 10, and I got hooked.
Where did you start at 10 years old?
Terra Pomaria. I grew up in Terra Pomaria.
Very cool.
I had sort of three births in the ACA. I kind of came and went and came and went and came and went. And each time I changed my name, and each time I sort of changed my focus. I was in a high school play called Brigadine for those Rodgers and Hammerstein bands. And I was Mr. Lundy, the wise man of the village. You could tell from my cheesy high school Scottish accent. It was also the year that Braveheart came out. And when I was a senior, a sophomore friend of mine's brother-in-law told him to invite all of his cool friends to go to this thing that was kind of like a Renaissance fair and kind of like a comic book convention, because the season of the con hadn't really been born yet. You had to know someone who knew someone about Oricon, or Dragon Con hadn't been yet managed or anything like that. And I said, sounds great, let's go. And we went, and I had an absolute ball. And I totally bought into the Saint Irony household in the day of the Fabrizios, and the Deo were getting rolling, and all those other storied households, McGurns. A lot of it was Summits focused, but we were all over the I-5 corridor. So it was kind of my first introduction to a lot of non-standard things that I had not grown up around. And it was pretty fantastic. So I'll stop there, otherwise I could rattle on for a while.
Did either of you have early mentors that kind of helped you get into it that are still playing today?
No, I don't think any of mine still play. The woman who introduced me to the SCA, oh, no, that's not true. The woman who introduced me to the SCA, she hasn't played out here in many years, but her best friend at the time is Dwana, and she still plays. And I still run into her occasionally at events.
Very cool.
A lot of the folks from my founding household, the St. Irony, will come out of retirement to blow the dust off their kit periodically and come out for a household member's elevation, or Grand Thing in Eggles is sort of our anniversary event. So we'll often see them and find them there, but none of the people I grew up with are still active.
Yeah, somebody is saying that Vivien is hard to hear at times. Vivien, is there any way you could turn up your mic a little bit?
I can't, but I can use a herald's voice.
All right.
Conversely, if you want to run downstairs and join me at my spot, the open mic will catch both of us. If you want to come join me, you really are hard to hear.
Is it easy
honestly.
to hear now?
We can hear you, but the recording probably can't, and you do always sound like the quietest of the four of us.
All right, I'll come down. I'll be back in a minute.
Look forward to your company.
Oh, sorry, tonight been a little riddled.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of technical issues tonight, but we're here and we're going forward, and we'll just wait for Vivien to come back down. But
Anytime you can trade a kettlebell out for a redhead willing to sit next to you,
it's a good deal.
it's worth your time.
Always a choice worth making.
Absolutely.
Yay!
Vivien, release your voice onto the world.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, my.
All right.
So what initially drew you in? Both of you now are multifaceted in your SCA playing, but what was your original focus?
Dirty songs. I couldn't get enough of the idea of being able to swear in front of adults because I joined not when I was 10, but when I was 16, I'd say. And the idea of everyone singing songs with swear words in them that were not to like a bass guitar or a metal riff was ridiculously captivating. And I'd take them back to high school and sing them for people at lunch hour. And they're all the dirty body songs that we don't sing so much anymore because we're all mature and whatnot. And we're also all old, so we go to bed before, 10 o'clock.
I'm gonna go with older. I'm not gonna go with more mature.
All right, I'll give you that. I don't have the stamina I did to join the hour in which those songs still come out. I hope they still get sung as often as they once did, but I was totally geeked out at the nighttime fire because I was a Boy Scout for years and have been missing that campfire out of doorsness with good company and good food. Contrary to what you say, Boy Scouts do not have to eat poorly. And just that sense of fellowship, that sense of community around a fire was absolute crack. I tell an actual 10-minute story about my first event ever that is fun because it makes anyone who's been eventing for more than 5 minutes cry, and I feel like a hero every time. How about you? What kept you coming back?
I was very much the freak at school. I was in a small town where I was not really all that welcome. So getting into the SCA, I got to do service sort of around the clock, and it gave me a place to be and people who could interact with me in a way that was positive. So for probably the first decade I was in the SCA, I was doing service at events kind of around the clock. So I do 20 or 30 hours at any given event. And it was all positive interactions. It was all, saying thank you and people being polite and people being kind. So that was really what got me very hooked on it, was that kindness that came out from people who interacted with volunteers.
So can we talk a little bit about dedicating that much service time at an event? Because that is a lot of time. And I think a lot of people feel sort of overwhelmed or feel like it's daunting to sort of balance, I don't know, like the fun and their family and like whatever with serving.
Oh yeah. And I want to be super clear. What I started when I was 10. So when I'm talking about volunteering around the clock, I mean, I was an unsupervised child in the time when that could still happen in the SCA. And as long as people didn't figure out how old I was, I would volunteer to do whatever I could get into to have those sort of positive interactions with adults. So I do not advocate that as a healthy choice for an adult or an intentional pathway for an adult who wants to serve the SCA. It is not that.
Or a 10-year-old. They'll call the cops on you. Don't do that.
It turns out, yeah. We don't do that anymore for really good reasons.
Oh, you guys are muted.
No problem. We were exchanging a private word.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, they were
He's telling
muted
me
on
that-
purpose.
He's telling me that his mic works and I can tone down again because I was yelling for mine upstairs.
A brief side point is my darling partner and I went on a roller coaster once that she was excited because it was the tallest roller coaster west of the Rockies. And we made this whole trip to go down this roller coaster because she knows that I love thrill rides. And she got on this roller coaster with me at Knott's Berry Farm, and it was called Ghost Rider. And they do a really good job of clinking you up, click, 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 click. And you're at the top of the world and you look over it and then you drop, as every good roller coaster starts with a drop. And she began screaming for terror the entire time we were on that. And I lost feeling in my hand because of the clamp she had around that arm. To be fair, I have way bigger thighs than she does. So the safety bar stopped on my legs and left her rattling around like a pea in a can.
So I'd float every time it did a thing.
But she screamed this ear deaf. And so I'm to this day a little deaf in that ear. And I have to kind of cock my head. And she was yelling straight into it while talking to all of you. So we had a gentle volume connection.
All right then.
Also, I grew up doing heraldry.
Also, we're not quite humans.
Also
Yeah.
that.
But yeah, that was
Super cool.
the gig. Is the time I came out of Summits and the household I was in, this almost communism sort of idea of you put in before you take out, not you take out and then you put in. So if we came to an event, you either helped set that event up. We did a lot of field clearing before the events for work parties and stuff. The whole group would go down or meet. You stood gate, you stood parking. Back in the day, we used fire watch, constabulary, all those things that you had to sort of stroll around to make sure everyone was safe and everyone was having a good time. And we did an adequate job. But the thing is, and it gets mentioned all the time with sort of a rueful head shake, well, it's a volunteer organization. What are you going to do? But the idea that before you got to have your fun, you had to sign up for how you would pay for your fun. And that, I think, landed on both of us at a pretty formative age. And that kind of dialed into, we can't enjoy ourselves at an event unless we have either a job or we've worked our butt off before the event, because we still really have that sense of paying into the pot.
Do you think we've lost that? And if so, how do we get that back?
I think we lost some of it. I think one of the reasons we lost some of it is some of the same reasons that we don't let kids do gate anymore, and we don't have fire watch or constable anymore. The result of the last 20 years or so of changes in modern law and the consequences of changes in modern culture mean that you need, in a lot of cases, to be trained to do a job. It's not something where, I was 15 or 16 and I walk up to gate and say, show me the gate sheet. And, 2 hours later, somebody wander away and I do gate by myself for 4 or 5 hours. It's too complicated now. It wasn't that complicated when we started. And for a whole bunch of reasons, almost all of our jobs are more complicated. You have to know what the rules are, and you have to be ready to talk other people through those rules or be certified or approved by someone to handle money. I mean, there's all those complexities. So I think there are people willing to do it, but so many of the jobs have become more complicated than they used to be. Even lists.
The even list is now,
it's so much more
do
complicated.
you have an advanced degree in quantum physics? You can now run Crown lists. High five.
Right.
You are a special superhero. So yeah, the jobs all got more complex than they were when we were getting started. I also don't think the age of the households is taking a break. There used to be, everyone was in a household and there was an excitement to being part of a household. And now it's excitement about a locality. It's not, I'm a St. Irony kid or I'm a river dragon. It's now, I am from Dragon's Lair. I am from, Storm March. So how we center our identities in the SCA has changed as well. There's also a very real, this is one of the places where you watch me run out on a limb and then chicken out and run back to the tree. A lot of folks felt like they graduated out of service. They've spent a lifetime giving to the SCA, and it's their turn now to coast. And not coast, because that also suggests that they're being lazy, but all of that transactional stuff that makes an event happen, that gives an SCA event life, requires a lot of hands. We haven't really changed the number of hands so much, but a proportion of those hands have retired from active assistance of doing the transactional stuff. They're thinking big thoughts and making great things and really focusing on training. And I'm not here to say that's bad necessarily, but it definitely has had an impact on our larger culture.
And it gets back to the idea that the jobs are more complicated. So if somebody has been doing those complicated jobs for the last decade because nobody else was trained or had the time to become trained and do the job, getting your replacement takes longer and longer because the jobs are more complex, and you need somebody who isn't just stepping in, but is willing to do all of these things and learn all of these things in a volunteer organization and then take it over from someone. And instead, what I see happening more and more is people volunteer to do the job, and then they are in the job because they can't, there's no one to give it to. There's no one to turn that job over to. And at some point they burn out, which is also understandable. They go, I'm not going to be the exchequer for the 15th year.
Right.
And they want to coast, which is understandable.
Whereas it used to be, the exchequer was someone who could successfully sign their name to stuff to pay for an event, and that was close to the job. The jobs all got more complex, and it's no longer the case that you could just throw anybody that could fog a mirror into the job. Even if you have a willing volunteer, we've seen it across all of the baronies we play, that there may be willing people to do the job, but without clear mentorship or a clear playbook, they really struggle for the first year or two. And I really reject the idea as a professional development professional in my life that it takes you 3 years to get good at your job. But that's kind of where we're at for a lot of things. If you want to help on the internet and you be a web minister, you either have to show up with a career behind you that says you're good at computering good, or you have to really have an active mentor. And both of those are pretty rare in a historic society.
So I am super interested in mentoring and mentorship and how we can establish that better in the SCA, because I don't think we do a very good job, but we have so many people with knowledge that want to pass it on, and so many people that are eager to learn and are enthusiastic. How do you think we can do that better? If you have an idea, I'm totally like throwing all these big ideas at you, but I'm all excited about this stuff.
You can go first.
Ultimately, I feel like a broken record because I've heard myself say this 1,000 times in the last year, but I've also in different spaces saying it. So I appreciate the opportunity to say it here. This is a once in a generation opportunity. The pandemic has forced us to learn new skills and new tools. And even while we're dealing with trying to navigate tonight's event with a low bandwidth in the neighborhood, because, hey, hot tip, neither Washington nor Oregon planned on 80% of its workforce going home and working on keyboards for the majority of their time while people game, while people then stream all their entertainment. That we don't have infrastructure for that. So we struggle with when it's going to work and when it's not going to work. So even with all the challenges that come up, late adoption, people who have a very serious age bias on who they think is going to be good with computers or not. Everyone's had to learn this baseline of connection, and we have exposure to it in the careers we have. And so we were able to kind of jump ahead a lot of things because we are that sort of perfect storm of right person, right place. It's simple things. I'm currently building a document that I completely stole off of His Grace Saverick's playbook, 100 things to be 1% better, right? It's all simple things that you have complete control over. Doing the sisters interviews is one. You're modeling it on a way to make connections happen with folks. You've also expanded your guest list to be from a broader group of walks of life. And if we had a directory of all the peers in on tier that wasn't the OP, but we had a self-selecting group of peers saying, yeah, I'd love to mentor anyone. I'll tell you all you want to know about public speaking. Let's do it. And you put Scamp's name next to that. Any newcomer could be like, yeah, I'd love to learn some public speaking or how to engage people on the internet. I teach a course from Multnomah County here in Portland. I teach the county employees how to engage folks in a hybrid environment. Like that's a class, a 2-hour workshop I run. A hybrid environment, of course, being I didn't even use an acronym and she caught me. A hybrid environment is some of your folks are in the room with you and some of your folks are external via like a chat. we are in the same room together, but the both of you are remote to us. We're now working all in a hybrid environment together. But instead of solving her technical issue, we had her come downstairs and hop on the same mic I was on. And because I'm a total nerd, I have an open mic setup. So I've got a speaker and my camera and my microphone are all separate. So all those tiny things you can do to build a directory, direct people to that directory. Don't bury that directory 73 pages deep in the website. Build it right off of the newcomer page, which is linked right off the front page. I mean, there's a lot of science, brain science, computer science, and psychology around how websites get built and around how human brains work. And I think one of the flaws the SCA has cooked into its DNA is that we are all looking backwards so often with our time that we don't tend to look forwards to tools we can be using to better connect people to our passions. And the SCA has to be about passion. It's too much of a pain in the ass to be in the SCA if you have not found a passion yet. So making the distance, we talk a lot about knowledge gaps and barriers, shortening the knowledge gap and the barrier between new people finding their passion and people who can helpfully nourish that passion. We got to find ways of making those shorter. And it's not handing out paper business cards at Saturday Market, which was a completely legit way of solving things for a really long time. And it was cutting edge for 1998. It's less so now. That's probably my soapbox in a small period of time.
So mine is very much in line and has a slightly different perspective because by profession, I work in IT specifically with websites and business logistics. So, and teaching is something I very much enjoy doing. So the confluence of those is where I start talking about things like adult education, because most of the people that we want to teach in the SCA are adults. Not all of them. I like youth activities too, but for this conversation, we're talking about adult learning. And we don't actively teach how to teach adults because adults don't learn the same way kids do. So knowing how to teach and how to format classes and how to format trainings for adults, there's a whole skill set that goes with it that we could be teaching each other.
Right.
And that could also be playing into not just mentoring for, things like being officers or doing events, but also it goes right into the arts and sciences and being able to teach better other adults the things that we're passionate about. So there's all kinds of science around those. And especially with the circumstance we have now with COVID, most of those things translate really, really well online and have the added advantage of being able to put all the DEI work into those online trainings because it makes it more accessible to almost everyone. Right. There's still some limitations, but things that aren't accessible to, for example, if somebody can't hear very well, an in-person class, they may not be able to hear all the content, or if somebody can't see very well, they may not be able to see, the objects that are being shown by a teacher, but you put those things online and have adult learning as the construct for it, make it accessible. And now, there's closed captioning and they can see every word you're saying, and you can use the camera to show what you're working on, show it close up, big enough that people can see it. All the content is there for people who are neurodiverse, so they can go look at it in whatever way they can take it up better. And all of those things mean we can mentor and train people better. And it's more accessible now than it's ever been. And we can be more,
Right.
Come play with us. We can show you what you want to know and what we're passionate about. And it can be a lot more fun. And it all involves that sort of overlap of the modern tech and modern information about teaching. Right. With all of our super cool historical stuff.
A great example of that, it never got more crystalline that we were on the right track with the way we were trying to expand our internet outreach than when we had our first virtual court. And when we had our first virtual court, we wanted to hand out awards. We had a backlog of awards like a lot of coronets will inherit when they step up, because often when we had physical events, you couldn't have enough events to hand out all those awards. We took pictures of each award, and we replaced our picture with a screen share of the award in all of its glory. And we had people who were saying they haven't been able to see an award for years because they aged out and their eyes were no longer good enough. Now, while they hold up a piece of paper in the front, they know what the activity is, but they can't see the artwork. They can't appreciate the hours of effort and love that scribes have put into that.
And it's amazing artwork.
Right.
I mean, I can't even describe how much fun it is to talk to somebody that's never seen the SCA before and talk about, oh, you know, we do this artwork and, you know, the awards, and they're super cool. And, oh, hey, I have a picture. And you show them the thing we hand out to people for volunteering or to recognize them. And watching the person who's never heard of the SCA, watching their jaw drop at the level of artwork that we are handing to people without money. And yeah, it's one of the best recruiting tools I've ever encountered, is being able to show people how amazing our artisans are and how generous.
I mean, at the end of the day, the heart of the SCA hasn't changed. The secret sauce, the addictive element, whatever you want to call it, we recognize people for their efforts publicly and loudly with pomp and circumstance. Like, you might get an Employee of the Year award with a little plaque, or you might get a watch when you retire, but those are like once or twice in a lifetime events.
And you're never going to put it on your wall because they're ugly.
Probably won't put on the wall because they're blood ugly. The Lifetime Achievement Award from, you know, your county job. But now, if you show up, even if you work secretly behind the scenes and you're introverted and you think no one sees you, the SCA stands on top of a log stump and screams at the top of its lungs, I see you and you belong. Or at least it has that possibility. We don't always marry reality to the dream, but we've all seen the dream hiding around the corners often enough that we keep showing up. So
That's beautifully put.
Did she freeze again?
So I'm going to back us up. Am I frozen?
Nope,
No,
not
you're good
anymore.
now, you're good now.
Sorry. I'm going to back us up a little bit and ask how the two of you met.
you want me to?
Yeah, I do it.
All right, cool.
So it turned out we had both been in the same area and at the same events and literally at the same campfires and not met each other for more than 10 years. We were literally at the same campfires, and one of us was coming to the fire while the other one was leaving because we performed at the same fires and knew the same people. And at a Halloween party, not an SDA event at all, we were both at the same Halloween party and saw each other. And yeah.
Quitter.
You are welcome to.
Everything she said is true.
And
the Halloween party was fantastic because if you've ever been at an event with me, there is a gear that my brain, my sugar level, my energy level, and my sense of mischief all kind of combine at once, and Scamp is let loose. And I joke a lot of times that I'm a Gemini with 3 faces, and Scamp is definitely one of them. And Scamp was in full effect. But I was at this party, and I actually had her carded because I was convinced she was too young to be at the party where there was alcohol and adult content. And turns out she's a couple months older than I am. And she had also dressed up as one of my absolute all-time favorite underrated comic book characters in the ever of ever. And it was a super subtle costume. Let's see if you've got the secret sauce. 80s style clothing, leather jacket, a blue contact and a green eye, and a fish floating on a stick. Anyone know who that is? The character is Delirium from the Sandman saga by Neil Gaiman. Fantastic books, not safe for work or children. mostly from violence, also for some other reasons, also for language. They came out of the late 80s, and they're
a product of the 80s.
So many of the Gen Xers and the elder millennials were born of the 80s. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's different in society than it was. There's so many counterculture things from the 80s that really inform a lot of what we like and a lot of what we do. I was dressed as Tinkerbell in a bodice I'd made myself because my first degree is in historical costuming. And I decided, fuck it, this year I'm bored, I'm lonely, I'm single. I'm going to wear a bodice, a purple mohawk, and combat boots. And I'm going to see what happens. And folks out there, that's how you're going to meet your partner. I'm just saying, lean in. I got more attention in that week of parties that I went to dressed as Tinkerbell than I had my entire existence on Earth from everyone on the gender spectrum, and it was gorgeous. I was unprepared for how much love got aimed at a chubby kid from the East Coast. It was pretty perfect. There's the wand from Tinkerbell. Remains in our treasure box.
Nice.
So yeah, that's how we met. We had never met each other in all the places we were expected to meet. We didn't meet in the SCA. I was a dirty, rotten fringy for the first 12 years of my SCA experience. Proudly a dirty, rotten fringy. She was a lady in waiting to a baroness, which was the coolest thing I'd ever heard of. And I'd never before been invited behind this curtain to see what the moving parts were. And then on an absolute whim, I volunteered for sergeantry. Because this girl I was excited to spend time with kept disappearing at SCA events. And she did not SCA like I did. And I couldn't bring her, like she liked the Bardics, but she was so tired at the end of the day of volunteering, she rarely made it through a Bardic. She'd get to like an hour into a Bardic. And a really good Bardic's supposed to last 3 to 5 hours. And even in on-tier still, the Bardic has kind of a mixed reputation, but she didn't SCA like I did. So if I wanted to spend any time with her, I had to figure out how to go legit, if you will. And so I entered sergeantry and learned a lot about the SCA that I didn't know and really took to. It's the proudest I've ever been of a C+ in my life, my sergeantry written final. But yeah, that's how we met.
Were you a sergeant in Terra Primaria or Three Mountains?
Yep. His Excellency Terra Primaria keeps trying to trade on that and saying he basically owns Three Mountains right now, but he's confused and is rabble rousing. And there is no fight here, brother. There is no fight. But yes, I am a proud sergeant of Terra Primaria.
That's awesome. And Vivien, what were your thoughts about this whole fringy dude?
Oh, I grew up a fringy, so.
Grew up as strong.
Well, yeah, I got older as a fringy. So he was willing to come play and have fun doing new stuff, and I thought that was awesome.
That is awesome. That is awesome. How long was it after you met that you both kind of got official mentors in the SCA?
I don't know.
Yeah, they're not events we usually connect in. So let me think about that for a second.
And
When did you get official mentors?
Sure. I can start with that because mine's sort of been all along. I have a lot of passion that needs to be directed. Otherwise, I spool up and I spin out and I go find another door to knock on. I am deeply and incredibly loyal, but also really need to remain engaged to remain engaged. I need a job. Like a freaking terrier. I'll dig a hole in your backyard just out of boredom if you don't give me something to do.
I can't relate to that at all.
Yeah, I'll chew the legs off all of your furniture if you don't give me something to do. My official title was head shenanigator in my first household. Kent, Galen and Pug Silverthorn were my mentors coming through. And neither of them are peers. They are known throughout On-Tier, from summits to Canada, as bards and as fire tenders and as safe people to be around part of the Alphabet Mafia, LGBTQ plus community. But they were my mentors for learning what it meant to be a mature man in the SCA more than they were, this is now how we'll do service, or there was never that specificity to it. I was elevated without a peer mentor. I, of course, had advocates, I imagine, in the Pelican Council, but I didn't have a master per se. I list them in my lineage because they're the reason why I stayed. They're the reason I learned, and they gave me a lot of the skills for being comfortable in unfamiliar places that I have taken everywhere in my life since. You move forward a little more, and I run into the Baron and Baronesses of Terra Pomaria, Roland and Emma and Mariana and Gowan. And they showed me what family can really look like with people you've just met. I understood now what family looked like with people you came through with, that they invited you in, but also not just how to be family, but how to create family. Both of those households are really good at creating family. And so they're part of what I consider my lineage. And then, of course, I ran into the power duo of Ludviga and Attias Stormhand. And those are names to conjure by. It's hard to not be in their orbit without seeing the impact on the lives they've had over their careers in the SCA, and wanting to rise to that level and be that meaningful to other people. Again, coming from the idea that you put in before you're allowed to take out. And both of them have put in and continue to put in at a nigh unfollowable level, but it's a good goal to have. And yeah, those are the mentors I came through. So I had them all along, but where I was in my SCA growth changed on the mentors as their interests in the SCA waxed or waned. They always did a pretty good job of handing me off to someone else.
I didn't really have mentors until Ludviga. What I had was a lot of really good examples that I used to figure out how to be the kind of person I wanted to be. So I spent a lot more time getting to know lots of different people and figuring out what I admired about them, and then trying to turn into that person. So in kind of a corny sense, Antir was my mentor, because I gathered all of the little pieces from all of the different people I knew that were good people, that did admirable things, that did kind things, that did things that inspired me, and gathered those in piece by piece, building myself as a human. The SCA was a fundamental piece of my personality because I came into it so young, and there was nothing outside of the SCA that gave me any of those examples. The first time I had an official mentor of any kind, it was Ludviga, and that was 9 years ago.
9 years out of 30.
Yeah.
One of the things that we both benefited, I guess I benefited from Vivien as well as Ludviga, is when it came time to step up and swear our oaths. I won't speak for Vivien, but to the best of my knowledge and the three of our knowledges, Ludviga was the first to do this. Vivien was the second, and I was the third. Because we didn't feel a strong connection to the thrones that elevated us, speaking only for myself now, we swore our oaths on the earth of Antir. Everyone who came to that event brought soil from their gardens and from their parts of Antir, and that was contained within a bowl. And I was sort of baptized and sworn upon that dirt when I took my oath. And that comes right after my marriage in terms of the most important ceremony to me in my life. And to be able to recreate that for other people is one of my goals.
I didn't know when I asked Ludviga, when I wanted to do it on the soil, I didn't know that was what she had done. I had no idea until I asked her, and she's like, oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah. close your eyes briefly and listen to her cackling and gleeful that, oh yeah, we'll do it that way.
I can hear her.
She sounds far more sultry than I just did. I don't know how she is that goddamn gorgeous and I end up as Witch of the Woods with very little effort.
She is definitely the voice in my head a lot of the time as well, and in a lot of really good ways.
Yeah.
She's like the epitome of leading by example.
I wanted to add to that, but it's just in every way. Yeah. So
she is all short. Let's not overlook this. She's still wee. I mean,
Yeah,
she's not perfect.
But she
Let's
has
not get ahead of
great hair.
ourselves.
I mean,
She does have
she
great
has
hair.
great hair.
Sorry. Back to you.
She's perfectly imperfect.
Yep.
there we go. I like that. So what are your service superpowers? What are the parts of service that you feel you were elevated for, and what is your passion where service lies?
My passion is making it so people don't have to reinvent the wheel, particularly for events. So much of the time, people put way more work into planning and executing events than they have to, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they didn't get a playbook for, hey, here's 50 things that can go sideways or 50 things you should expect. And here's the solution for 99% of the issues in these 50 things.
There's a spreadsheet for that.
I literally have a spreadsheet for that. But yeah, that's my passion, is making it easier for people. It should be fun. I mean, it should be challenging because there's a lot of victory in, taking on a big job and doing it well. That victory is something that shouldn't be understated, and it shouldn't be harder than it has to be.
Right. And so what you do is you kind of lay the groundwork, and you create databases, and you create job descriptions, and give people a framework to work from.
Yeah, and a lot of it is making connections. So we were talking earlier about how things have gotten more complicated than they used to be. So 20, 30 years ago, you could say, I'll run an event, and you'd literally make a call to a local park and say, we want to use it on this day, is it open? They'd say yes, and then give you a permit. You'd give them a check that you may have written yourself, you'd get reimbursed for later, and then everybody shows up and you have an event. That we can't do that anymore. There's too many things going on. There's city laws, there's county laws, there's all kinds of SCA rules, there's all kinds of insurance rules that we have now, and none of them are insurmountable. They're all very pragmatic things, but the list exists. It's not something that anyone's psychically going to know. And it changes because the laws change, insurance changes. So I spend a lot of time figuring out how to make the connections of, hey, how do you stay up to date? What's the checklist for? Where do you need to go look to make sure you covered the thing? Where do you go look to make sure you ask for the right insurance by the right date? None of it's rocket science. It's just making those connections and then making sure people know how to get them.
It may not be rocket science, but it's so important. I've been Seneschal of a barony twice, and I've never had a job description. I never had any idea what I was doing. I just made it up as I went along. And I think that what you're doing is key to making those jobs, those complicated jobs, more accessible. So I think it's really important.
Nice work.
I like it.
My peer superpower, I love this concept of the peer superpower. And it's one of those things that people, especially Pelicans, seem to have a hard time articulating sometimes. If I were to say I had a superpower, it's I can always see the emperor's butt. I have I have a complete lack of flinch based on position and station. I value everyone a great deal. It's not I value everyone equally. It's I value everyone in the estate a great deal because I have a sense of what it took for them to be there. My family did not have a lot of wealth when I grew up. I had all of the privilege that comes from being a standard factory standard white boy is what I like to say. But I saw the barriers that were between me and participating in the SCA. And then you start adding all the D&D modifiers of, oh, I was a person of color. Oh, I'm obviously on the queer community representative. Oh, I'm obviously somewhere not obvious on the gender spectrum. So I start registering how hard it was for everyone to be there. And so I don't get intimidated at all from the people I encounter in the SCA. And that's kind of my superpower. And I have no problem telling a Leonis Secundus that she's burning the chicken and she needs to pay attention. I also don't have any trouble, no problem at all. See you in a bit. I have no problem joking with their majesties during court because I never was born with that pure fear. And I get that that's a complete mutation and almost everyone has some flavor of pure fear. I somehow lack it completely, and that leads to some fairly inappropriate moments in my history, which are often some of my best stories and proudest days. So that's my superpower. The way that ends up working is I talk and teach a lot about social currency. The idea of social currency is kind of a new one in the business world and the professional world, but the idea that you're all given a bag of coin when you're allowed in the door, and you can either grow your hoard or spend your hoard. And then when you're empty, or worse, if you're a deficit, everything gets harder. But if you have a hoard, you can spend freely and constantly and often, be that giving tree, Shel Silverstein's sense of giving your all because you have all these resources. So when you encounter nexuses such as yourselves, such as a Savrik or an Attias, a Ludviga, a Steercar, a Skeggy, whether you have good feelings about these people or bad feelings about the people, they're nexuses of community. And so they have a great deal of social capital of people who are going to look out for them, look out for their reputations. And there are people who they can lean on in times of, I've got an idea, help me bring this to life. Or I've got a newcomer and you would be a perfect fit because your sense of humor is awful, just like theirs. Our dogs are feeling neglected.
Hey, babies.
So yeah, I'd say my superpower is the concept of I can see the emperor's butt and he has no clothes. And I feel you on the allergies because the air was so crisp and cool and glorious. I opened all my windows and immediately started suffering. So I'm on like 3 antihistamines right now just to be standing upright.
Woohoo!
So my husband just delivered some to me, so I'm hoping I get relief very soon. I'm very sorry.
No problem.
No problem.
You are both, I consider both of you artists as well. We've talked a little bit about both of you doing Bardic. Scamp, I had no idea that you had a historical costume degree.
Don't let that get out. Don't tell anyone. They'll ask me to do stuff.
I'm very interested in that. Tell me about that. Like, what did it entail? Did you like focus on a time period?
Or were you just bullshitting us?
No, that's legit.
Not at all.
I have it's not a BFA because I got tired of being in school and I ran out of money. So it's only a BA in theater. The BFA was going to be in historical costume design with a minor in directing. I love performing, but I have a couple qualities, I guess, that makes memorizing lines really, really hard. So I also am a terrible artist. Like I can't sketch for nothing. And I will live and die in envy of the costume designers that can just open up a sheet of paper and go to work. Aaron, anyone who's seen his work will just attest to it. What I got really good was shaping. Throw the fabric on the form, cut, clip, form. And I really, in a past life, Scamp's future 1.0 was I wanted to be a dramaturg. I wanted to be a person that was paid to go learn everything they could about a historical period, give a book report to the cast and crew, and then the props people and the costume people would come to me for all the details. How high was the hem? How was the collar formed? How was the arm's eye closed? What were the fittings and finishings? What were the accessories? What would the lamps have looked like? All the material culture of history really spoke to me. And so I got my major period was spent on Italian Renaissance, which is amongst the most complicated. I've made all of my late period dresses I'm going to make in this lifetime because life is too goddamn short. And it's one of those weird sort of like, is it a fish, is it a fowl places, which is often how I find myself inhabiting the world. I'm married to a gorgeous woman who is heteronormative, standard issue gal. I've recently come closer and more comfortable with the term pansexual for myself. I like those places that allow me to inhabit whatever space I fit into. So it was less about the joy of constructing things and seeing it in front of you, so much as it was the knowledge of why society thought it was good to make clothes like this. And that's been my jam forever. But it's hard to translate that into the SCA unless you want to go back to school. And I really struggled with school my whole life. I have very few teachers I hold up as ones that I admire, despite being well overeducated in a couple different directions. But no, the historical costuming, my favorite jam was Italian Renaissance, and sort of immediately after that, British Edwardian. So
Wow, that's really.
And I laugh because not many people know that that's his degree. And I've had the delight of sitting there a few times when somebody would decide, he'd say something and somebody would decide, oh no, he's scamping. That must be bullshit. And then they go off and do something and come back. And I'm like, no, you should.
How did you know that?
You should listen because he's walking around with more on that topic in his head than you have right now. And my favorite was somebody who wanted a particular costume piece to throw together. And they decided that he was bullshitting them about how to do it.
No, she knows everyone in the story. It's the best. This is the good tea. This is awesome.
Do you want to tell the good tea?
Oh, I had totally forgotten that story.
It makes me
Okay,
happy.
so at Ontario Westward, there's many a themed party to be had. One year, the themed party was the period underwear party. Well, when you're learning about clothing, you should start with the underwear because there's reasons the underwear looks like that. And it's not because it was just en vogue. So, Master Proto-Pelican and Sir Knight approached Mistress Laurel and said, hey, Household Laurel, you know of clothing. Please, I have 20 yards of muslin and I need to win the period underwear party. And Mistress Laurel said, well, underwear is not really my jam, but yeah, bring it over. I've got my needle and thread. We'll figure something out. Cool. And Sir Knight and Sir Proto-Pelican, at the time, now a pelican, Proto-Pelican and Sir Knight showed up with both their giant swacks of muslin. And I looked up from my book I was reading and said, hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're going to wait for Mistress Laurel to help us make some period underwear. I'm like, oh, cool. And went back to reading. No one asked my help. No one asked for my input. I don't need to put my oar in. Mistress Laurel has this. And she was gone for a while. And then she came back and Sir Knight wandered off and Master Proto-Pelican hung out. And Mistress Laurel began putting and draping and kind of wrapping and winding and basically turned a really good looking lean man into baby Huey in this giant man diaper. And I'm like, no one's asked my opinion. No one's asked me to put my oar in. I'm gonna keep quiet. And baby Huey's looking down at their new diaper and a little upset about it because it does not look sexy and will not be winning any contest looking like that. And I said, y'all working really hard. You know that's not how a breech clout works, right? Well, you think you can do better? I'm willing to give it a shot if you let me. Okay, let's see what you've got, smarty pants. And I walked over and I went, tear. And I tied a loop around someone. And I put a little floop up the front, a little floop in the back, and tugged it tight. And now there was a 30th of the amount of underwear involved. And that was a standard issue breech clout. Boom. Super simple, shows up in multiple cultures throughout history. Now you're done. If you want to make it sexy, you can tuck in all the extra fabric under the bottom. You can also make it the bikini floss, or you can make it the, briefs backing. Whatever you want to make it happen, however comfortable you are, they're both period. And Mistress Laurel lost their mind at me. How long were you going to sit there and let me fuck this up before you were, excuse me, how long were you going to sit there and let me screw this up before you came in and told me the easy way? But wait, it gets better. Master Proto Pelican walks off cheerfully, feeling all sexy and fantastic. And Sir Knight comes back and notices Spava. Mistress Laurel still sitting there scowling and says, oh, I'm ready. I brought my fabric. We ready to do the thing? And Mistress Laurel says, no, Scamp's going to help you. No, I'm not. He wants you to help him. You know how to do it. Now I showed you. It's easy. Yeah, why don't you help him out? No, I'm good. You can help him. It's fine. I'm sorry. I'm good. And she stomps off. Not actually angry, just playful friends angry. And Sir Knight is baffled. Is she coming back? Probably, but how about I help you out? No, thanks. I'll wait till she gets back. Let's just get started before she gets back, because I think it'll be weird if, let's just get it taken care of. And then Sir Knight, I believe, won the period underwear contest with their fantastic physique and the butt floss style of breech clout.
Oh my God.
I had totally blacked out on that story, but it's
That's
it's
one of my
hysterical.
favorites. It's just people assuming that you're razzing them on and not.
Well, similar, you weren't confident that I had a degree in history. You're like, are you screwing with us? Nope. But I try to keep it on the down low, because as any maker in the S, someone knows you have skill, they will for help. And that's not the help I want to give, because it's a little more esoteric than make a thing.
And it's not the thing that brings you joy directly.
And that's really it. It may be my first degree, but it's not my most beloved effort in life.
Makes sense. And Vivien, you are quite talented as well. You've been doing a lot of work this year.
Yeah, I've been doing lots of stuff. Been doing all the stuff that is fun and shiny.
Why?
Because it's shiny. Because I got hooked on, I've always had a thing for metalwork. I want to learn metalwork since I was a kid. I made lots of jewelry, took a bunch of classes, and I wanted to make all the stuff. And then I discovered Scythian stuff, which is made up of the shiny metal bits. And then I needed something to put the shiny metal bits on. So I had to make the clothes that I could put the things on. And then it turns out those were super shiny and colorful. So I had to make all of those things too. And it just kept snowballing.
Well, I think you're super talented, and it's been really fun to watch you do stuff.
She has a
Have
bit
lot
of
fun.
she has a bit of a Tyus's gift in that anything she touches looks way better than it should for a freshman or sophomore effort. Just because they got curious and they have enough skill in their hands and their eyes talk to their hands well enough that it just kind of happens. And they will both fight you to the death that they're any good at what they're doing, and they're both wrong.
I think that it also involves having a high standard and being willing to put in the work and the practice and make the mistakes to get themselves to that standard.
And a lot of it is the protective need to make all the mistakes happen where no one else can see them. So I'll burn or destroy anything that's a learning effort that isn't something I want somebody else to ever see. Because I'm, yeah, a product of many things, but the only thing people see are things that I think are done enough, but it also means that I've spent so long staring at all the flaws in it that that's all I can see by the time I get there. So the only times I've ever been pleased with something I've made are things that I have forgotten I made until someone reminded me of it. Go, hey, that looks good. You made that. No, yeah, like 5 years ago. That's not bad.
I have had that conversation with people as well in the SCA, and it's always sort of shocking. I made that?
Yeah, because you forget and you move on, and you're off to the next thing that inspires you, and you forget about the stuff you made before. And we make a lot of stuff in the SCA.
My particular art jam for the last couple of years has been writing historical ceremonies for folks for their elevations and their awards, and that's another one of those magic rabbit holes that the SCA just keeps giving you. Like, you can make your own fun. You can learn things that are exciting to you. You can research stuff that's meaningful to people, and it's pretty great when you can tap into that sort of reality. The teachers, the community, or even better, build your own space and invite people into the room with you. That's been a lot of joy comes from that as well.
Oh yeah, that's been the most fun thing I've done this last year. As much as I've had really a lot of fun making, I guess 2 years, what even is time since COVID? As much as I like making things, I've had so much fun putting together a class to teach other people how to make the Scythian hats for 20 bucks. Because once I understood the pieces of it, being able to go, oh, this is totally accessible to anyone. And you could do this for not a fortune and not have a bunch of preset skills. It's really forgiving, and here's the stuff. And that's been as much fun as any of the things that I've actually made. Is figuring out that process and how to put all the pieces together so I can teach somebody else how to make it. I actually got the first picture of one of my students finishing a hat today. So that was super exciting.
And I am so excited about that work that you're doing, because when I teach stuff like that, I get so caught up in first you card the wool, then you make the felt. And it's so awesome to have you taking it and making it so accessible. It's really,
it's always easier to do it when it's a new skill, because if I wait too long, I'll forget which parts were hard at the beginning and which ones were easy at the beginning, and where the weird vocabulary is. My latest one is learning about woad, because I really like purple, so I wanted to learn how to do the purple dyeing, and learning about it, just going out and doing the book and internet searches and trying to figure out, okay, so what's the recipe? It reads like you're joining a cult. It's so weird. They use weird vocabulary. They have disagreements about the weirdest things that make no sense. It's so strange. So figuring out the pieces as I go and going, oh, and I just got the book this week that makes it it's a chemist, a guy who's a farmer, and he did a bunch of chemistry and engineering, and he puts it in those terms. So the stuff that came off as like cult-like descriptions of, you have to do it when it's this temperature outside and this humidity, and you have to use a black cauldron made of steel to do it, and all these weird things. And he just does the chemistry. He's like, okay, it's these 8 things. Here's the formula. Here's why it's weird if it's too hot out. And being able to translate that at the beginning when I figure it out it makes it easier for passing along to other people.
Super cool. Right. So art wonks, you've got them. You are both just really, really well-rounded SCA individuals. What made you decide to take on this job of being Baron and Baroness? What were your original goals?
There might be a little bit of crying before I'm done talking about it. we are coming to the end of our term, and our first year I spent crippled with a pretty catastrophic injury, and we made as much fun and progress as we could under those circumstances, and graduated, I think, 7 new sergeants to 3 mountains.
Fantastic.
And then 2 years of COVID came, and we stepped on a 12th night. So a lot of our goals and dreams of our time in the hot seat didn't come to fruition. It comes back to that. I think I said it more thoughtfully tonight than I have probably in a while, is you have to put in before you can take out. It goes back, sitting Baron has never at any stage struck me as anything other than work. It's not a great honor to be chosen as Baron. It is a great responsibility to be chosen as a landed coronet. I hesitate to use some of the language I use sometimes because it feels like I'm trying to diminish or to dim other people's lights. But a lot of the roles in our game, including the highest on the land, is won from a game of speed tag. Can I get you before you get me? And that is grossly doing an injustice to all the skills necessary to become a fighter of that caliber. But what you sign up for is essentially a 9-month hitch where your life is being interrupted, and this should be one of your focuses. The skills that are required to become a royal aren't necessarily the skills you're going to need most while sitting the throne. And that mismatch leads to some of our more outlandish theories and speculations. But we couldn't bitch about it if we didn't take our best shot at it. So on the one hand, you have to put in before you can take out, or you have to take your turn putting in at the very least. We feel pretty strongly about, and so we did. Speaking only for myself now, I have now given myself permission to bitch about every coronet from now into eternity, no matter where they are on Earth, because I know what hard looks like. It's baroning during a pandemic. So next time you have to, baron during an Armageddon where the skies turn red, the oceans boil, and people are dropping dead all over the Earth, you let me know how hard your job was. So yeah, that's that's it in a nutshell for me. What do you think?
I forgot the question.
Why? And what did you want to do?
Oh, why is such a good question now? I had the good fortune to interact with and be inspired by a lot of the coronets that I interacted with growing up in the SDA. And I wanted to do that work. It had and has a lot of value and is a huge part of building community, which is really important to me. Being the center of the local community, so you can spend the time to foster it and make it grow, adapt to the current circumstances, because every coronet does it differently for good reasons, between their personalities and their strengths and the current circumstances. I mean, whether that's, the area that you're in or the people who are currently playing in that area, everybody does it differently for good reasons. Mm-hmm. And I wanted the chance to do that service and build my community.
We also were unabashedly futurists.
Yeah. Despite
playing ancient peoples, we wanted to drag the SCA kicking and screaming from 2008 all the way into 2016 was our goal. And we think we managed about 2015, 16. Okay. Yeah. So we still have a chance to get us all the way up, perhaps to 2020, and we're excited to be part of it. And I say that disingenuously, but it's also been where we spent a lot of our energy talking about the tools that are available to us now are different than they were 10 years ago. And the challenges are different than they were 10 years ago. And one of the struggles is helping folks who have taken a break or stepped back reintegrate and understand that their energy, their heart, and their ability to deal with people hasn't changed, but the tools have changed. So if you were amazing as an autocrat 15 years ago and you ran every event, no event on earth is run that way anymore. And it's hard to communicate that at any level of life, whether it's work or whether it's business or whether it's school or what. Trying to convince someone that their brain and their heart is the important piece we need, but their experience somehow expired when they weren't looking and it's no longer relevant is a really hard rope to walk.
It's
Because it's so easy to either see their barriers go up and them shove you away as someone who's just attacking them, and being able to penetrate in and say, fighters get it. We don't fight in the SCA the way we did 20 years ago. We don't fight in the SCA in the way we did 10 years ago. And 5 years from now, we won't be fighting the way we're doing today. It has to change, and it has to be reborn Phoenix-like constantly and endlessly, because it does expire. It can't sit there at the back of the pantry without going off.
and it is a bitter pill when you worked really hard to learn skills that don't work anymore.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, and it's true, because they do keep evolving. And it's not that there was a hard expiration date. It's that we, like everything, we keep evolving. The processes, the interactions, I mean, and we have to. If you're doing anything that involves the modern world, the speed of change it's going to keep happening.
And it's going to accelerate.
And one of the things that we're trying to foster is professionally, it's a growth mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, in the modern world, we call it a growth mentality. It's also true in the SCA for things that change, because changes aren't going to stop. We're learning things from history. Those things aren't going to change. We're going to learn more about them. But all the things we do to interact with each other and build our community, they are just going to keep shifting. We can't freeze them. They'll die if we freeze them.
Yeah.
We don't want Bombay.
Yes, please, no.
Well, along those lines, you were incredibly proactive when the pandemic hit. It felt like you knew it was coming before some of the rest of us, and you had solutions ready to go before people were really even thinking that what the problems would be. Talk a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about that and what kind of groundwork you laid in the beginning?
So one of my degrees is environmental science, and part of that training was the pandemics. They're
Historical pandemics.
and
I'm going to fill in the blanks a couple times as she gets too humble.
yeah. So
She understands the math where it comes into biology, where biology and math intersect.
and then the human interactions that go with it. There's a whole study of it's called human ecology, and part of that study is pandemics, because as humans move around, we do predictable things. So yeah, winter. I knew by January this was going to happen, because all of the predictors were there. It was part of my degrees that we learned. This is what's going to happen. Here are the branches. Here's what's going to happen next. So we had a little bit of warning to go, this is what we're in for. What do we want to do?
We got toilet paper before the outages.
Yeah, we did it. So that's
Like legit.
That was part of it.
So March, just to set this in kind of the time frames. So, the poor archaeologist who's looking at this 2,000 years from now, March 2020 is when Oregon shut down and Washington shut down. March 2020. Vivien was worried about it in November of 2019. It informed a lot of our choices during the holidays in 2019, because we had an expectation that we'd be seeing a lot of folks that we got to interact with for the last time for a while, and that we were going to be bunkering down for a while. She convinced me in January of 2020 that we needed to get really proactive in getting ready. February came and we said, okay, everything is awful. It's about, the switch will flip. It should flip today. It's not going to, because people aren't convinced it's an American problem yet, or it's not a North America problem yet. It's those folks over there's problem. It won't come here. But the thing about biology, humans, and math is it will.
Yeah.
There's an endless parade of data behind the science that just endlessly points towards that solution. And yes, we're on the left, we're progressives, we're liberal in real life, we're vaccinated, we're not wearing our pins right now, we forgot.
Yeah.
We plan to. But between what we knew for our jobs and the tools that were available to us in terms of teleworking, recording online, giving people systems. We both are trained in public service, so we both have an understanding of the broad tenets of EDI work. It also shows you where we learned it, because I call it EDI and she calls it DEI.
Yep.
And we try not to fight about it.
And for part of the background, we both worked with the public health departments. So that was also part of the, we can see from here what's next, because we've literally seen the playbooks for this, then this, then this.
This is how emergency response responds to a pandemic coming over the city or the state or the country. We've been in the rooms when a lot of that stuff gets discussed because of our expertises. So we weren't Nostradamus, but even today, we're struggling with people we have loved for 20 years to try and convince them of things like data and historical fact and biological science. And we shared it with everyone we knew, but even people we knew, we were just one more opinion in the crowd. And it didn't matter if we were experts or educated or that she holds multiple degrees in science. We were just one more voice in the room.
So we spent a lot of our energy towards what can we do to keep our community supported when this happens. So we had about 2 solid months of what are we going to do? What's going to work? What can we support long-term? Because that was the other part, was being pretty sure it was going to be long-term. It wasn't going to be short. It wasn't going to be the 3 months because it's not important. There was data. So planning everything originally for long-term, what can we support for the next year or more, not just what can we do for the next 3 months.
We spent a lot of our time in that period between January and March, what we called in our conversations in the household, building capacity. How can we build capacity? What sort of systems can we put in place so that we can respond to this when it happens and see after our own physical health, see after our own mental health, and then establish a pod that makes us not go buggy. And so some of our more at-risk members have a chance to have a life during that period of time. How are we going to support people in our barony who are isolated and don't have a pod to connect with and may go hungry? How do we encourage how do we encourage the barony to look after itself safely during that period of time? And we took that very, very seriously, because the service mindset, and because it felt like we had the skills, the training, the opportunity, and honestly, the affluence at the time to be able to connect the dots on that. We don't have children, and we are both working professionals. So we were able to connect a lot of the dots for folks who struggled, and we still lost people.
Yeah.
And we had to navigate that.
We spent a lot of time putting together things like regular check-ins with people, figuring out how to make sure we had people's connections, not just online, but things like addresses. What were their physical addresses? So figuring out how close people were to each other so we could arrange food drops if people needed them.
People who are recovering from injury or illness, people who were, most of what we did at the end of the day had more to do with making sure that people who were isolated still felt seen. So that there was regularly scheduled events, whether it was a craft party, whether it was a viewing party, where we all watched the same movie on Netflix at the same time and cracked wise on the Facebook chat. People who otherwise couldn't go to church, couldn't connect with their usual communities, weren't making it to events, weren't making it to, and we encourage our officers to do the same, and we empowered our officers to do the same. We want to see Scribble nights, make them digital, bring people into the room with you, and they're going
We've had
on.
digital Scrabble nights for
Scrabble nights, social
more than a
nights,
year.
newcomer nights,
newcomer
bardics,
classes,
and events.
Bardics. We stood up online events as fast as we could. It wasn't as fast as I wanted it to be, but we pushed hard for it starting about April.
Yeah, April is when we sent out the missives to the landed baronet and baroness list, shared it with kingdom officers,
Yeah.
and had our hearts broken because we ended up being just one more alarmist voice in the room. People appreciated the work, they acknowledged it was good work, but no one took up the torch. No one leapt onto that until much later on. I want to say in 2020, it was well into the summer before stuff started happening. We did the glow up stuff, and that was fantastic, but it was also very isolating for folks that weren't invited to it.
Yeah, and that was where we discovered, we knew, but we didn't know exactly how to adapt, that Facebook became the primary communication point for people in the SCA.
Right.
And that Facebook algorithms fundamentally shifted 3 times last year. And each time they shifted, the way that people got their communications changed. So things they used to see every day would disappear, and they would think that they were being ignored, when in fact, for whatever reason, the Facebook algorithms weren't showing them the information they thought they were, unless they went looking for it. Right. And we watched that happen 3 times, where it shifted differently each time.
So Facebook is amazing at joining us together unpredictably.
Right.
It is a very imperfect tool that there are alternatives for, but the best part of Facebook is it is the lowest common denominator that everyone can access predictably.
And even that, we found as the pandemic went on, we found more and more people who it was costing mental health to interact with Facebook. So we started losing people on Facebook, right, which left us with,
we had a very clear bell curve during the experience.
And the people who left Facebook aren't coming back because it's not
good for
them. Yeah. So that entire mechanism, we started trying to find other ways to hook people in. And what we found is the websites are one of the only reliable ways to do it. And we, as a kingdom, don't have a consistent mechanism for keeping them up to date in a stable way that everyone can access as simply as they access Facebook.
Yep.
And no one's got it right. In my professional opinion, working in the industry, no single element of the entire known world SEA has broken the code on how to make a 2022 website that operates as well as all of the commercial websites do. And we can't address that without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, or dozens of thousands of dollars, or a couple $1,000s. We can close that gap, because the number of times people say, I looked at the website, but I couldn't find it, so then I had to dig it out of Facebook. And that's not what you want to hear when you're trying to drive membership or engagement or the chance to be seen. So it's all a work in progress.
Can I ask you how you reached people and let them know that they were at least being invited to be included? Because I saw that a lot too, where people are like, oh, I got excluded, I didn't know about this. And it's like, almost none of that stuff was exclusive.
Right. No, 100%. It was right. Anyone who wants to join us, here's the deadline, come join us, send us your clip. I'll do all the work, said a lot of the folks that built that stuff for us. So I'm not throwing any shade at any of the organizers.
I know. I'm just wondering how you overcame that.
The hard way. Individual invitation. We went through our roles. We went through our Facebook lists. And we so there's this ancient rule, and I'm sorry, I keep talking.
No, you finish. Okay.
There's this ancient rule in advertising. You have to tell people, if you want someone to make a buying decision, I'm going to purchase that thing. Which is another way of saying, if you want to get someone to change their behavior, you go from not buying stuff to I need that thing. You've changed their behavior. An old rule of advertising is you have to tell someone something in 5 different ways, 7 times. before you will have convinced them. That's why there's not just the one Snickers commercial. They have 5 Snickers commercials that they run in sequences that convinces you when you're in the grocery store checking out and you glance down, you're like, oh yeah, I remember the commercial with The Rock. I want a Snickers bar. They've told you the same thing in 5 different ways 7 times. And so Dame Lisette is a master at this. Whenever you can get Dame Lisette on your autocrat team, sorry, your event steward team, I've dated myself. When you can get her on your event steward team, she understands advertising, and she will send every 2 or 3 days, she will send another blast on Facebook, and that's when the algorithm starts paying attention. Once it becomes regular, when you send one invitation out, there was a brief, what was it called? The Evites. There was a brief period of time in the teens of 2000s where Evites were all the rage, and people get pissed because they never saw the invite. Why didn't you invite me? Why didn't you pick up a phone and call me? Well, because I'm a millennial and that's a superpower. No, thank you. Or I'm a Gen Xer and that's a superpower. No, thank you. One of my superpowers really is I can call the pizza guy and talk to him on the phone and get pizza later. That's apparently a lost skill for our people, but I remain the pizza provider. But no, being able to invite people by name is how we did it, and also beating a path to water. It's not one invitation. It's not 2 invitations. It's 27 invitations, and a reminder that happens at the same time every month that these are standing opportunities.
And long term, because those are not sustainable ways to do things. I mean, we do it now because we have to. Long term, that's not sustainable. So getting back to modernizing a bunch of communications in a way that can reach people, having people's email addresses again. So it doesn't have to go back to the steps. We don't have to go back to that.
Or the Yahoo groups,
or the Yahoo
God's
groups.
sake.
But having something that people can opt into that does do something that says, hey, here's the events that are happening in your area. So it shows up as an email, and it can get posted to Facebook, and it can get posted to the other social medias that people use. But we also need to clearly communicate where those places are.
Right. What's your
right now,
first
we
and
don't
best
even
point of
have that.
contact?
Yeah.
For some baronies, it's Facebook. For some baronies,
Kind of like a MailChimp kind of thing.
a little bit like a MailChimp,
Yeah.
but
It needs to be opt-in though, which is where the Yahoo stuff fell down. Was it turned into opt-out?
Yeah.
And they need to be opt-in so people can manage their
degree to
information
touch.
feed. Right. And right now we don't have an infrastructure that lets us do that. We don't even have consistently a list of members.
Right. We don't have that's not at our ready fingertips.
It isn't something that gets communicated.
And it's this is me throwing no one under the bus because the world be on fire.
Right.
But we've asked 4 different groups of people 4 different times if we could get a list of names for our barony. It's not readily available. And some folks believe it's readily available, but they're unable to give it to us because reasons around an imagined law or policy. So what that tells us isn't that they suck, that they're liars, or that they're bad at their job. What that tells us is it's not clearly delineated anywhere for folks. Or if it's clearly delineated, it's in a document that was written 8 years ago that's buried 30 links deep in the website or the archives. So let me spin you a fairy tale, unless you've got a bit much of it. Here's a fairy tale. Imagine, if you will, you're new and you've got a free weekend. You like video games, you like horses, and you like shooting a bow and arrow. You hear a friend of a friend tells you about this SCA thing. So you Google SCA. The very first link that shows up is a link that says, SCA is the Society of Creative Anachronism. Come join us. We have lots of fun. You click that link. That link is now says at the top of the screen, welcome newcomer, you found your way home. Where do you live? You click a link or you put your zip code in and it sends you to who your local folks are. And it shows you a face of the local chatelaine, seneschal, baron and baroness, and said, these are your new best friends. Contact these folks to see what's coming up soon, or check out our webpage. Most 98% of people will check out the webpage, but they've seen your faces now. They click your webpage and the webpage says upcoming events. and has that next to our Pride flag, our BLM flag, and it's also right next to all of the information about what's happening very next. And then the banners at the top say Populous, Archive, Past Arts and Sciences. That's what the modern expectation is of being able to navigate a website. Now you get a pop-up. If you're on our site for more than a minute, you get a pop-up that says, would you like to join our mailing list? Whenever we have a new event coming up, or any of our merchants have a sale they want to advertise, you'll get an email. Would you like that? And then you type in your email to that. And then on the user end, they get an email whenever the event page changes. They get a fresh email. On the admin side of it, the baronial webminister and seneschal will get an email saying, Bosco Fancy Pants in your area spent 22 minutes on your website. 22 minutes is huge. That means they looked at every single page you had and they're excited about it. So the Shadowlands job becomes reaching out to newcomers. They send them an email. Hey, Bosco, I saw that you were on our website for a little while yesterday. Don't freak out. You're not on a mailing list. We're not selling your information, and I'm not here to sell you earbuds or dinner plates. However, this is when our newcomers meet once a month, and we talk about all the stuff. We give you a chance to ask questions. We have some fun. We crack some wise. We tell some stories, and you're kind of going to see what the flavor of our group is. See if it's your jam. That doesn't have to be a fairy tale. All of that exists, and we pay somebody, and boom, it's done, and away it goes. This frustration, I'll speak only for myself, I've experienced is we have enough people who have computer science degrees or who work with computers as a living, who have volunteered their time and their efforts to assist the baronies, the shires, and the kingdom to solve these problems. The problem is once you make your job your hobby and your hobby your job, your hobby is the part of the bridge that has to give way. And so we aren't able to make a ubiquitous planned decision for all of it. We had to pay, a couple of years ago, the SCA had to pay a lawsuit out, and all the baronies were tapped for their funds to pay for all the legal fees and the settlement. And it happened in a month. All that money was raised. Can you imagine the kind of banging website we'd have for the SCA if we put $8 million at it as a solution?
And
like,
as a web developer, the kind of site he's talking about is, it's not that big of a deal. That's how nonprofit websites work.
Yeah. It's not wizardry.
It's really not wizardry, and they almost come out of a box now. But the way that you keep them is you get a professional to maintain them, and you have to pay for that. Doing it with volunteers, you'll get professionals who will do it for a couple of years, and then they're like, you know what? This isn't my hobby anymore. This is my job, and I'm not getting paid for it, and I really, really want to step away. And it is a skill, and you can teach somebody some of it, but
it's as valuable a skill as a top-end customer is.
Yeah.
And we value that in the SCA. We don't necessarily value our web developers in the SCA.
It's by yourself in a quiet room away from all the events.
Ada Lovelace isn't in period.
But she should be.
But she should be. First computer programmer in history. Look it up. Ada Lovelace. There's your homework. Okay. Viewers.
That's our internet rant.
Sorry. Yeah, that is a raw and an active nerve that drives a lot of our efforts. Is we know what our current state is. We know how bad it could be. We also have been here long enough to see what it's been. But because of our professions, we know what it should be to make the changes that we all hope for. We want to see a parade of 20-year-olds walking through the door. Nothing about our environment is welcoming to 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
And there's no more explanation needed than that. We have not created a 20-year-old friendly environment that interacts with today's modern 20-year-old and how they want to be seen and how they want to be able to interact. The people we do get, we should be lavishing our attention on because they were willing to jump through the ridiculous hoops we've put in place to enter our game. All the fear of us graying out is real. the membership numbers support it because we're not the only. Oh, that's Chrome, baby, and it looks good. You keep it. I've got my own floof started up here in the front. But yeah, my barber told me it's not gray, it's chrome, and people pay extra for that.
Right.
We've in the 80s and the 90s, we were one of the very few games in town for the weirdos. This is the season of the geek, and there are so many places for weirdos to spend their time, effort, and money. And a lot of it, like Twitch, has huge communities. TikTok has enormous communities that we are not even glancing at because the bar feels like wizardry, just like a good website. This right here, the Sisters interview, is complete witchcraft compared to what the average SCA member knows how to do or accomplish. I mean, anyone who's ever given you the first bit of grief, I hope your first response was, well, do yours. If you've got the secret way of breaking the code, do yours. Yeah. But until you finish the document I keep asking you for, explicating how you do this, we can't promote it. We can't teach other folks how to do it. And I'm not actually throwing shade, but
I know, but that feels so weird to be asked for that, because we literally were like, okay, how do you Zoom? Let's fuck around and find out. How do you live stream to Facebook? Let's figure it out. You know, I mean, but
that's what pioneers do, right?
Right.
That's like, what we're definitely Lewis and Clark didn't have fuck all of an idea what they do when they got in those rowboats, those canoes. They were hoping for the best, and they broke the trail. So and I hear you. I totally hear you. And also, it's not what you signed up to do for the rest of your life. So
have you seriously asked her for a document? All right, I'm on it. I have a deposition tomorrow, but after the dep, I'm on it.
Beautiful. Awesome. Perfect. We will promote that far and wide.
Yeah.
But the idea of lowering the bar for these things, that's really what we're talking about. We got to lower the bar for membership. We got to lower the bar for engagement. Because for a variety of reasons that happen completely organically and without any sort of hate or gatekeeping intention behind them, we've created a lot of hoops and gates.
One of the things that we encounter a lot is when we do get a new person to talk about how they got into the SCA, one of the barriers is we use SCA language on our websites.
Yep.
We have an entire genre of language that we use. There's a whole list of words we use that are not common usage. We stopped thinking about it after a couple of years because we've learned the language. It's a huge barrier.
And because we're excited to be in the club now.
Right. It becomes part of the membership.
We wanted to go native as quick as possible. So you start speaking in that
most people
dialect.
Do. But it means like even on the website when we have the events up and somebody goes to look and say, oh, you have events. I want to go to an event, and they pull up our webpage. They can't read it.
What the hell's an event steward?
Why am I talking to a steward? What's an Eric? Is that guy in charge? I mean, do I have to go talk to Eric?
Right.
And why is he in the center of everything? I mean, there's this whole list of things that become barriers to them even coming to an event now. And all of that could be cleaned up and explained so we can have our internal lingo and also make it accessible to somebody who's new. Right. But it involves a lot of discussions about that reality. And it feels weird to a lot of people saying, you know what, we have to translate what we're saying for newcomers because it's our language, and saying that we're going to translate it feels strange a lot of the time.
Yeah. One of the things that is something I learned very late in life and in my career, because I had some very patient colleagues help me out with it, is this idea of universal design or targeted universal design. The idea that you build something so that it is of benefit to everybody who touches it. Every intersectionality that you can imagine, it benefits them. And it doesn't benefit them equally, right? So one of the examples that gets used in conferences everywhere, because it's one of the things that we all have some experience with, is the cutouts at the corners of most streets. If you're in the city, there's a cutout of ramp into the road. Now, as a nominally well-bodied human, I can step off the curve, no problem. I look for traffic, I step off the curve, and away I go. But if I require a cane or crutches or a wheelchair, having that cutout is the difference between me crossing the road or not. So universal design has benefited both of us. It's easier on my aged and well-used knees to take the cutout. It also is a sensory sensation that I am now entering a crosswalk, and now I need to be more alert and not look at my phone while I'm crossing. I'm totally the guy that's going to walk into a telephone pole looking at his phone someday. If that's going to be me, you'll see me on the news. But universal design helps everyone. You know, a rising tide lifts all ships. We hear that, but the idea in our head that is we're helping everyone equally. We're not helping everyone equally. We're helping everyone to cross the street. We're helping everyone to achieve their goal. And the benefit to them is slight or life-altering, life-changing. And that ends up being part of EDI work, is if you can center conversations about people with less privilege than you up front. If we benefit people with less privilege than you, we all benefit. We get more voices at the table. We get better ideas. We get a richer experience. We get new recipes. We get all sorts of amazing stuff happens when you get more voices at the table. And I think that's what a lot of our energy is spent on, to not lose anyone we have and to make a space for more voices to join us. So that's my professional rant. I don't remember what the question was. Did we answer the question?
I have no idea.
Why did we Baron? Why did we hat? Well, because they're pretty awesome.
I think
they are. They're super pretty.
I think that actually came out of how did you start planning for the pandemic, and what did those plans look like?
We had the luxury of being able to plan.
Yeah, that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And you created sort of online guidelines for.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So talking about kicking around the idea of having online events, and it got down to it was because we thought it was going to be a while, that it wasn't going to be a couple of months, it was going to be a while. And watching so many events get canceled and watching the total heartbreak of the people who put all that work in and then not be able to recognize the work they had done and the work they continued to do. Because in those first couple of months, there were event stewards who were still having to figure out how to do things like refund checks to people that they've never had to do that en masse before, and even the logistics of doing it during a pandemic, and there not being any way to do the kind of public recognition that coronets can usually do, right? That's the big reward for wearing these coronets, is you get to look at people and say, you're amazing, thank you for these things that you did. I mean, that's the fun part. And not only not being able to do that, but not even being able to recognize them fully for all the work they were still doing.
You put a year's worth of work into this event that we didn't have, so you're not going to be acknowledged as someone who spent years working on this, like we acknowledged every other event steward in the ever of ever.
And you had to run around undoing your work without a playbook, which was also, I mean, it's really rough to watch people have to figure that out almost in a vacuum, because nobody knew what to do.
We had to write the rules, like as a society, we had to write the rules as we went.
So that was the motivation for we need to do it now.
And the other piece was, we kind of alluded to it a second ago, was the sort of trauma we felt as a community watching those events go down like dominoes.
Yeah.
We knew, and I mean the collective we knew that we were in for it. We knew that it wasn't going to come together, but we were hoping we get to go to Eggles this year. That happens in May. No, we couldn't go to Eggles, but because of all of the different moving gears, we couldn't cancel Eggles until middle of April. So we were all hoping for it. And then Eggles goes down. Okay, I'm going to June Fair. Fine. And then June Fair falls down. So we watched
all of that trauma,
all the joy run out of our game, as well as all of the continuation of the polarization, the political polarization that's happened to our society over the last decade, really over the last decade, got fever pitched as people decided where they stood on the COVID conversation. So we wanted to find a way to keep the lights on and the light and the
even
joy of life.
even if it was only for a few minutes at a time, some way to connect people to that continuity. So even if we couldn't see each other in person, having something online, so at least people could say, the SDA still exists. My chosen family is still out there. I can still interact with them in some way, even if it's not in the way that we all want right now. So one of the big barriers for doing that, when I started talking with other coronets about it, was we don't know how to do that. That sounds super hard. Why would we do it? Why would we do this thing this way? Why wouldn't we do it that way? So it was sort of going through, and this plays on what I do professionally. It was going through what makes it hard. What is it that why are you having an objection to this? Why are you having an emotional response to this suggestion? Talking through that and figuring out, oh, it's needing a playbook. Some way to walk down a document that's not, it's not a conflict, it's not, it's not an interaction that's unpleasant. It's a playbook for, here are your options. Here's ways to do it. Here's ways to have it be fun. Here's why to do it. And giving everyone those tools to be able to make that choice in an informed way, instead of just saying, I don't know, I can't, and walking away because the world was burning down. So taking away as many of those barriers as we could was a huge motivation for it. And it altered as we started going.
Right.
So the first draft that came out had a whole bunch of things about the online meetings and which technologies to use and which ones not to use. And it had to be updated a couple of months later because those technologies changed because of COVID. So Google and Zoom were both adding features, changing how much things cost. So were some of the other technologies.
They had different levels of stability. They had different levels of bandwidth recommendations. And the second you start talking about bandwidth and stability and Wi-Fi versus, a hardwired line, you lose the vast majority of our society. Technically, you lose the vast majority of Americans who don't work in those fields. They don't care. It's wizardry. I don't actually know how my microwave works. I know I hit 3 buttons and warmer food comes out. I don't need to know about why that mesh is on. That mesh is apparently very important.
You don't want to think about it.
It's very upsetting. Don't ever run a microwave without that mesh on it. But anyway, the idea that we had to lower the bar. We had to make it as simple as assembling IKEA furniture.
Which isn't to say it diminished the amount of work, effort, or intelligence of anyone involved. We are uniquely positioned as part of our modern jobs to know how to navigate those things. People in other professions have absolutely no reason to know any of that. Why would they? And why would they even know where to start on researching it? So we could actually sit down and figure out, how do we explain this to somebody who's not in our industry? How do we make this easy? How do we make it not challenging for people, so much so that while the world's burning down, they just back away in horror? So we spent a lot of time on that, and it's gone through several iterations now.
Let's probably do another one, but it's also exhausting. Well, Google Meet has improved several features since that time. It's also good that there's 2 of us that have enough of an overlap professionally that when I run out of spoons, she has one left in the drawer.
So we can pass it back and forth and we can still make progress. If we didn't have that professional overlap, I'm not sure that would have been feasible.
It would be a truly heroic human that could have done what we did by themselves. So I think the lucky happenstance of there being a Venn diagram that we could share overlapping tasks. And it turns out one of our secret kryptonite flaws as peers is we're not super great at working together.
No.
We do not walk in harness. We are the most misbehaving horses you will ever latch to the same cart you'll ever find. So what we do is have a lot of respect for each other's capacity and capabilities.
And you do a little divide and conquer too.
Yeah.
And that's a byproduct, not a strategy.
Yeah. And it's very much because we think differently. So we almost entirely have the same endpoint in mind, the same point in space in mind, but we will, because of the way our brains work, come at it from totally opposite directions. And we'll completely different. So if we try and do it together, it's kind of a mess, but we can pass it back and forth.
Yeah, we can hand it off and say, go get him, Tiger. We want to be in Paris by tomorrow and hope that works out. Or we want to have grilled cheese in an hour and hope that works out. But because we're experts for whatever that means, because we have experience in our fields, and we spend so much time in places where we have to justify our recommendations to other folks. Please do this because it's what the science, the studies, the data, the research, and the poll all say we should do. You just need to let more of your employees work telework. No, I have to have them in the office or they'll be terribly unproductive. That's not what any of the research, the feedback, the brain science, or the polls say. Sorry.
Brief.
But what all of that works out to is, if we can just turn it loose, hand it off, everything will be fine. But the second we have to justify why we're doing something to one another, we are instantly in the red, and we are one mischosen word away from a fight. So we've learned that we need to.
And it comes out as divide and conquer.
Yeah, like I said, byproduct, not strategy. A welcomed byproduct, a productive byproduct.
I have a similar relationship with my spouse.
If you spend so much of your time learning to hold your own, justifying yourself feels like you're once again embattled.
Yep.
And the last person you want to be embattled with is your partner.
Yeah. Yep. I feel all that.
But I will die on the Tupperware hill.
Uh-oh.
All the Tupperware in a house matches. You buy 2 sets of the same Tupperware, you put it in the cupboard, and life is good forever. Any Tupperware that comes into the house that isn't your Tupperware is the enemy, and it gets thrown away, recycled, or returned. It does not go in the cupboard.
Tupperware is not period, honey.
Tupperware is
not
period. They
period.
would have used it if they had it. Ah! Sorry.
Okay. Rivkin, do you have more questions about the COVID operations?
Well, I honestly, like, you've opened my mind to a lot of things tonight, and I really hope that whoever succeeds the current crown is open to some ideas on technology, because I think there is really an untapped what is the right word I'm thinking of?
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Opportunity, yes, opportunity there that we should really just sink our teeth into.
I think so. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for the SCA to grow in wonderful ways. One of my favorite examples is we had an online event earlier this year. Well, actually, 3 of our online events now have had classes where one of the teachers wasn't even on this continent. I don't ever want to give that up. That's amazing as an opportunity for us.
Yeah,
And there is no way that can happen not online. So there are some fabulous things we found that I would like to keep long term and encourage for the SCA.
And it's a way to, please.
I was just going to say, being able to take a class from Rowan from Lockhawk.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was through Three Mountains or Terra Primaria or both. Was amazing. Amazing.
Lisette arranged for both of those. So yeah.
Yeah.
We also want to not lose, like we talked about, your experience expires at some point, right? Right now, everyone's experience with these online spaces. Let's grow our online spaces while the majority of our community has a little bit of experience with it. Pandora couldn't fill the box up again, but Hope was at the bottom. That's totally period.
Totally period. Actually, I think it's Victorian.
It's not. People.
So somebody asked in the chat, and this isn't about the pandemic, but they asked what are you guys going to do after you step down? What are your plans? Do you have big plans? You can take a break? What's going on?
So we are going to take a break of sorts, mostly so that we are not underfoot for our heirs. Whoever it is who follows after us, we don't want to step on their toes. We don't want to abandon them, but we also don't want to step on their toes and say, well, when we did it, because nobody wants that. So I'm really looking forward to having more time to do all of the art things. I have a stacked up list that I'm really looking forward to.
Awesome.
My night and I are going to be a bunch of rattan swinging, traveling murder hobos for the next period of time. And we're going to try and stomp down every event we can get to, living out of a tent, road tripping all over the place. It was the plan for 2019 before I tore my hamstring off of my hip.
Do not recommend, by the way.
Break your leg. Just go with the traditional leg break. You recover faster. Walking's not that hard while you're recovering. You do not want to experience the glories of a body brace, or more importantly, how to poop while wearing one.
Yeah,
Don't-
that's as hard as the look on your face suggests.
Don't Google it.
Yeah, no.
It is.
No.
I still have nightmares of that 9-month period, and that happened pretty much immediately after we stepped up. We had 12th night, the injury, our first event in February.
So the main takeaway of this interview is don't ever take pooping for granted.
Legit.
I feel
don't.
like we've shared a lot of information today and a lot of ourselves, but if that's all you took away, I think that's wisdom. Never take an easy duty for granted. There may come a time in your life where duty is not easy. And that's circling back to the Pelicans.
That could just be a metaphor.
Yeah.
Or it could be literal. It works both ways. It's fine.
Pelicans cool by shooting their spines and pooping on their feet. I have no idea why it's the bird of my order. We could have picked ravens, something sociable and useful and smart. No, we got pelicans. Poop on their feet, show their spines when they're hot.
And you can Google that and it's super weird.
Yeah.
Genuinely weird.
Okay.
What has been the biggest joy that has come out of the pandemic for you guys as a baronial couple?
I got to spend more time reaching out to people and being able to have conversations with them than I think I would have at events. More one-on-one time. I've really valued a lot of that. It wasn't in person, which would have been better, but I also think if all the events had been happening, the space wouldn't have been there for me to have longer one-on-one conversations with people, whether that was over video chat or over Messenger or any of the other ways of interacting. Yeah.
Because of our position in the SCA and the accolades that have been granted us, we have been able to be a constant active force in making Three Mountains a safe space, no matter how you come to us. And that's, I'm I'm squishy on the word joy or happiness. Normally, I have a hard time defining them for myself, but that's what I am most satisfied with. That's we made a start in what felt like an elephant. We have successfully consumed a large portion of this elephant and showed everyone the techniques for grilling elephant steaks. And so it doesn't need us for the work to go on. Unless someone actively sabotages, it has enough inertia on its own. We got the boulder off the top of the hill. Or we got the boulder up to the top of the hill. Maybe that's how it should be viewed. For all the coronets on tier and otherwise that have had to manage during the pandemic, there's a lot of sort of hidden costs that come from being coronet. And one of those is actually seeing members pass far too soon, not out of our game, but out of this world, where the SCA was a major part of their lives. And then you become, whether you deserve it or not, a luminary in their lives. And that comes with a certain amount of responsibility. And that's not been beyond my strength or our strength. I think Vivien especially has risen to all those occasions, but not enough gets discussed with the cost that being a volunteer organization comes to the volunteers that have dedicated their lives to it. And I just want to shout out every coronet and royal that has been around for this adventure, because it is not what you signed up for. And Some people have died, in fact. We always tell you, no one died, it's okay, we'll figure it out. Well, some people have died during the pandemic. And that just hits a lot harder with the weight of everything else behind it. And all of the things, all of the payoffs that you get from being coronet have been put in abeyance for the duration, so that we had to find new ways to get nourishment. And that's really what it comes back to. How do we stay nourished, and how do we make sure people get nourished during a pandemic when every source of our spiritual, emotional payoff has been put on hold? I keep saying abeyance, but really
It's on hold.
it's on hold.
Well, it feels like that. I mean, when you're talking about joy and happiness, I think the pandemic fatigue is real, and it is hard now to like really find something to look forward to, because you look at what people are saying and you're like, well, is 12th night really even going to happen? Really?
Right.
And
We have vacation tickets for November, and I'm completely unconvinced that that's a thing that'll happen. So I can't be excited or look forward to November anymore.
right.
So all that anticipation that we get for 12th night. Oh, I gotta get new clothes. Oh, I'm gonna see my Canadian friends. Oh, I get to see my Californian friends. Ooh, all of it's absent because I am so gun shy with investing any hope in those events now.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have any suggestions or if you guys have thought about it, but are there ways that haven't been explored yet to be creative, so that we can have like we can look forward to maybe something? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes back to leaning into the opportunity. We spend so much time grieving of the perceived loss and the actual loss of what's going to happen, that we start acting out of pain avoidance. We don't want to feel more grief, so we hold ourselves further back.
One of the things that we haven't done, I think, enough of is mailing physical objects. So having people sign up for classes or activities or even contests together, because at this point we do know how it's spread. So being able to mail things safely is something that can be done. I mean, things can go into quarantine, or they can be, depending on what the objects are, they can be sanitized. We know all of that now. So having people sign up for contests or classes or other interactive things, getting them mailed out ahead of time, just accepting that it's going to be an online thing, and that's okay, and that's part of the fun, and then having people gather online for those. So like kits for classes, or like the Stormmaker challenge that Stromguard used to do, where they get this box and there'd be these, you could make choices out of the box of what you could use that day for.
Pick 5 items and build
Right.
the thing.
So contests like that, where there's still an element of surprise, where, maybe you have 10 people who sign up for the contest and they all get, 9 things that are the same and 1 thing that's different, and then they create a thing. And they do it, like say they do it online. So they have to come show you a picture, or show the event a picture every 30 minutes. Or, they have an online stream where everybody can walk in and out of the room and visit with them while they're making whatever it is. Same thing for, like the archery competitions and thrown weapons. Those are things that can be done in people's areas with adjustments for locality. I mean, there's safety concerns in there, but, putting up the camera and having them actually do the contest with each other and making that the official contest.
Imagine a Zoom meeting with 12 archers with 12 cameras in 12 boxes, and the camera is focused on the target. It's always on feed. We know that. And that's what I talk about when I say there's opportunities to be had right now. Reimagining things is our solution. Folks who are dying to fight, generally knights who are living near their squires are often in their own pods. Let's have a challenge. Let's get 100 on Tyrion videos showing fight choreography. This is our favorite drill, or this is the Rifkin tag drill. We're all going to do the same drill, but we're going to put it up, and there's got to be 100 of them by next week, or you lose. Make it a competition. Make an award for it. Someone said something so fantastically snide to me at an Ursumus one year, and it was fantastic. Like, yeah, I really like Ursumus. It's like the last tournament where you don't win a job. And I was when I was young and God was a sergeant and dirt was shiny, we'd fight and we'd win like a cool knife or a box or something. Now we win jobs. Make a cool doodad, like ask an artisan to make something badass and say, all right, whoever posts a video, we're going to put all 10 videos up next week. We're going to upvote them. The one that gets the coolest upvotes, I'll reveal that it gets a thing. Boom. We've reimagined how it works. Our fighters are getting to see if their gear still functions or fits now that all the mold and the COVID-15 is settled in. They can see if their knees still work after not using them for anything more complicated than kneeling at their desk for their desk jobs for 2 years. That's what I mean when I say reimagine things. If you had one person, one of our dear friends recently passed, one of her favorite things, she is multi-talented, was doing collage. And so she made these handouts, these cards out of like newspaper clippings and other card clippings and bookmarks. She'd chop them up, redesign them, write you a handwritten note and mail it to you. We can't do that for the known world, but we can stand on every soapbox and say, you have a chance to reinvent the world and you're bitching about the world that's been lost. I mean, I say bitching again like I'm being dismissive, but we've all been grieving for 2 years. We may be grieving for another 2 years.
Yeah.
There is a larger than 0% chance that we'll have a mutation in COVID and get something gnarlier than Delta, where our vaccines don't count for anything and we hit the do-over button.
And there's no way to tell from here.
If that happens. So what could the SCA look like if we threw every tradition we had out the window and began reimagining what's possible?
Which doesn't mean disregarding the traditions we
Right.
have. It means pulling them all up, taking a look at them and saying, does this have value exactly the way it is for everyone now? It does? Great, we keep it. You know what? 90% of this one has value. That 10% doesn't serve us anymore.
Let's change it.
Let's change that piece.
And once again, the SCA is not a progressive society. It is a conservative society built equally of hippies and rednecks. And for years, the hippies and rednecks were able to leave politics at the door because they were generally white, standard issue, mildly affluent hippies and rednecks. And there was a money bar you had to cross to get in the game. As long as you had the money and you were willing to ignore that people had ideological differences than you did, you were able to play the game. The modern era has shown us that the character of the people we spend time with is way more important to us than we ever acknowledged before. So when these systems were born, these are the injustices we believe they support. Let's identify them and let's reimagine them. I'm not a burn it all down anarchist, but I am firmly of the belief that there is no system in place that cannot be improved through refinement.
To the benefit of the people who participate in it.
Right. And everyone who's talking about EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or inclusion, equity, and diversion,
Diversity, not diversion.
yes,
They're
but important.
very important.
People say all the time, I'm not a racist, I'm a good person. And yet the practices that you support and you uphold are support racially injustice practices. The way society changes is you change the systems that's continue to support it. So if we feel there's a huge inequity in the SCA in terms of who gets access, whose voice is heard, who's invited to the party, we have to change the systems that are maintaining where we're at right now. We can't just acknowledge that, well, yeah, that sucks and we shouldn't do it. Okay, we all agree on that, but again, there's not a playbook. We have to make tomorrow better than yesterday. That's the only goal. Someday and perfect aren't the goal. Better tomorrow than yesterday is the goal. Full stop. And it's easy. It's easy when you lower the bar. Oh, you're still on mute, Rifkin.
Sorry.
No problem.
My dog was barking. I was going to say that when you're talking about, expiration of skills and stuff and this, I think they relate, because what I think as a society, both microcosm and SCA and at large, if we could stop weaponizing words and descriptors and quit taking them personally and just realize that sometimes good people do racist things because they don't know that they're racist.
Sure.
And that doesn't make you a bad person if you decide that you are going to do better.
Right. And that's the magic. There's
No.
your magic wand. If
Right.
you know better, you do better the second
Right.
you know better. But if you get exhausted with the idea of you haven't been perfect before, don't spend all your time in grief and guilt and then get stuck. That's what we need to
taking it so personal that you can't get beyond the fact that you think somebody judged you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
one of the things that translate really well for the SCA is our fighters are constantly learning. When you start doing any kind of combat, you accept that you are going to need to continue to learn and improve, that you're never going to be perfect, and that is your moment in time, and you will, be that good forever. Nobody who does have any kind of combat accepts that. You constantly have to learn, go, whoops, that throw was a little off, that wasn't a good move. I stepped too far forward that time. I need to get a little better at that one.
Refinement.
It's that continuous refinement that never ends. DEI work is very much like that. It will never end. You are never going to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. It's about making continuous progress to get better at a thing that's important to you.
Yeah.
So it's that just a little bit at a time and not being embarrassed when you don't do it perfect, because that's not going to happen. It's getting better. And it's also just like with the fighters, sitting there watching them, and I watch them do this, and this isn't an interaction that's normal for most places in my life. This is one of the few places where I watch it and go, oh yeah, it's that. Having a conversation of, hey, I saw that shot. It wasn't a solid shot. It was almost there. Here's how to make it better. And nobody walks away from that conversation mad that it wasn't perfect, because everyone in that conversation accepts they're helping each other get better. That is that same playing field we need to develop everywhere else for all of the DEI work and all of the, hey, that phrase is super racist. Don't use that one again. Here's why. And then we all walk away going, yep, there's my incremental thing for today. I know a thing. And if you slip up later, somebody reminds you again, whoops, yep, stepped wrong again, did a bad shot. Right, I'll remember it better next time. Right.
Nobody.
And no one's ever going to be.
Nobody's
and that's
perfect.
okay.
No one's going to be. And there's no expectation for perfection, but there is an expectation of, if I tell you that hurts, don't do it. I don't want you to explain to me why you didn't mean to hurt me.
Right.
I mean, that's really the easiest piece. And I think one of the barriers we have to that is to be able to participate in the SCA at its highest levels, you have to have some disposable income, a lot of time, or really dedicated skills. Pick two at least. Ideally, pick three. And also, we're a reputation-based society. You are recognized by your reputation. So if you are attacking me for being a racist douche canoe, then you are, in theory, threatening my reputation. And I'm gonna get super prickly and super defensive about that. It's not to say that the message needs to be delivered, because I think it being softly delivered for the last 3 decades has gotten us to this point of progress. And now it needs to be more, that's racist, stop doing it. And there's enough critical mass of folks who are working to become better allies that's gaining traction, even if it's not as fast as those that could hope for it to be. I mean, it's also weird to be either adjacent or outside of the groups you're trying so hard to be an ally to, because you're not an expert on their lived experience, but you know what wrong looks like. So it's a complicated time to be alive. It's a complicated time to be an American, and it's a complicated time in the SCA. And in case I sounded dismissive earlier, I love me some rednecks and I love me some hippies. I love the places they came out of. I love what they bring to the table. And I am not denigrating either of those groups.
And to be clear, totally grew up redneck.
Yeah, I don't think either one of you are dismissive. And I think the fighting analogy is a really good one, because, one of the things you learn very early on in fighting is that you can't be embarrassed because you're not doing it perfectly, because you're never going to be doing it perfectly. And you're not going to ever enjoy it if you're always worried about people judging how you're doing it.
Right.
So anyway, we've been going a very long time though. So
We have.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah.
Well, you asked two bards their opinion on stuff. I mean, you got what you asked for.
no, this has been a great conversation, like really so fulfilling for me, actually. I hate the word actually, and I just used it, but because it just gives me a lot of hope that that we can get creative and we can seize opportunities, and that we can reimagine things. So
You guys have. I mean, this is one of the spaces where that's happened.
I mean, really embrace the success. It feels weird. It may feel like borrowed clothes. It may feel like your imposter syndrome is peaking, but really lean into the idea that it's one of the longest running one of these. It's one of endless refinement. This one's better than your first one. You've grown with what you ask. You've grown with who you've brought. You've grown with what you look for, and you've grown with all of those pieces. Tomorrow will be better than it was yesterday. Hopefully in the next decade, our United States infrastructure will get to the point where we can all be online all the time, all at once, without having janky connections.
Sorry about that.
No, it's not even a thing for you to apologize.
Right, it's not you. I mean,
Your city, state, and country, we're not prepared for a pandemic. The end, full stop, not you.
Well, thank you for saying that, and we're working on accepting that. I want to sort of turn that around on the two of you on a personal level. Scamp, you hooked me up with Vivien to sew for her, and it has opened up my SCA world. Watching the way the two of you think, watching the way the two of you care and love and nurture, and have patience with the fact that most of us are not caught up with you. And most of us are, even if we're trying like hell, we're having a hard time getting to where you are, because you are so visionary and you are so, you both have a gift. And I am very, very thankful to have you in my life, and to so okay. And I have all those pictures, those really cute pictures of you guys.
maybe we have to have them back.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do it again.
Part 2.
See how much hate mail you get after tonight.
Right.
I don't think we'll get any hate mail.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We've kicked a couple anthills pretty thoroughly this past year.
Thank you for doing that.
But yeah.
And that was going to be my final word. If we get a sum up before we sign off,
Yes.
you have to be willing to go rogue sometimes. And instead of asking for permission, you have to show proof of concept. If you've got a really great idea, don't wait for someone to give you permission to be brilliant. Don't wait for someone to give you permission to be brave. Go rogue, make a thing happen, and then you can point to say, there's the thing.
Yeah.
We did the thing. What do you think about the thing? Let's talk about the thing now, because we can see the thing.
And I have to back that up with the couple of hundred people that we've interviewed. Every single person that has had a major impact on the society has gone rogue. They have just done the thing. That is how the society was made.
Yeah.
So, Vivien?
Nope, he articulated it. Do the thing. Show people when the thing is done, or you are as far as you can get with the thing, and release it into the wild. It's the best way to make positive change.
I think that's going to be step 1 on the white paper that I write for you on how to do this. It's like, 1, you want something, you do it, be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
And then figure it out along the way. And, here's how we figured it out. But anyway.
I love that.
I think that's the perfect framing. That's 100% perfect framing.
So good at that.
Anyway. All right. Thank you guys so much. This has really been great. You're getting a lot of really nice comments on the feed. But I'm going to pimp is not a great word, but I'm going to promote next week. Next week, we're going to have their Excellencies Clemere on. And they've been doing some really amazing things throughout the pandemic. Her Excellency has, and I'm not saying her name because her Facebook name is sticking in my head. What is it?
Isa.
Isa, thank you. I just wanted to call her Andrea. Isa, she's been doing all these classes, and she has really done like over the top during the pandemic, and him too. Like they've done some really great things, and I'm really looking forward to talking to both of them. And they're both fantastic artists.
They stepped up during the pandemic too, didn't they?
I think they did.
Yeah. They knew exactly what they were getting into, and they still showed up. So that's high fives.
Nope, nobody knew.
Well, as
exactly.
much as anyone understands what
Yeah.
wearing a hat during any time looks like, but yeah. Cool. We'll be here to see it for sure.
Excellent.
Thank you again for tonight.
Thank you.
I just realized I'm not driving.
Oh, I am driving, so I need to figure out how to stop it without ending it, which I'm not good at. But I found the button. So
Hey.
thanks everyone, and I'll see you next week.